Jaskin Corlia, Tasha Tukan Solish Gould, Telly Boyta Dollar, Air Foot and Stetch, Erdu Gujian level is urge. Agus is Bullia Ulwari Shaw, the Ebrihe, agus the highly chart, Eganamina will price the petrol agus diesel, who heard is attached. Bully in the Telly Shaw go more, Agus Gajira, you should have Egoni a Pubble Twihi, now will Maran Reaku, Akaguch Karan, the usage, the wear Gantness rain, the umper public. Agus Lilinian Pandem COVID and New Jig, Vig na Kenya, Kri Shatu Stag is na million English in the Colarty dollar shop. And next to where and Conra her look with a shaw o Ray Ian of Well, Big Chuman in the Chira, a Rishni Smo a Ik. So a Hanishini Hart Garai na Medi Shaw Array, Augusta Kurum Erin Realtis, Kenchu Na Darlahai a Shaw. Taoiseach, we live in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and every day nearly now brings bad news to individuals. This morning we learned from the Governor of the Central Bank that mortgage interest rates will again rise next month when the ECB meets. This is despite the fact that you and your party voted against even considering mortgage interest relief that we put forward last night. And this week people also learned that tolls are to increase right across the state to their maximum level. And this is a massive blow to workers and families coming at a time of record fuel prices. These toll road prices increases are going to really hurt, and they're really going to hurt commuters. These charges disproportionately will impact on those living in rural areas who are forced to use a private car because they don't have the options of public transport. They rarely exist. And the lucrative contracts for toll roads have been a loser for the state year on year. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the taxpayer had to step in and pay toll operators millions of taxpayers' euros. And these companies are profitable, Taoiseach. The M3 toll operator recorded a profit of 11 million in 2021. The M1 toll operator had an operating profit of 8 million in the same year. Now, due to these gold-plated Fianna Fáil era contracts, motorists now were being asked to fork out even more and higher toll charges. It is not lost on people that their wages don't go up in line with inflation, but the government has ensured through these contracts that the profit of toll operators do. These firms aren't struggling to get by, and these increases are all about protecting private profit. So the government needs to intervene. Here, they need to bring all the pressure that they can to bear on the operators and Transport Infrastructure Ireland in particular. These increases, Minister, Taoiseach, should not go ahead, and it is the government's job to make sure that they don't. So far, we've seen no urgency in relation to this. Now, you said your government would intervene, but we haven't seen that yet. The Minister for Transport, Eamon Ryan, was aware of this proposal before it became public, and he did nothing about it. Yesterday, your government colleague, your party colleague, and at the Transport Committee, Minister Hildegard Naughton admitted that the department were aware of this as early as September, Taoiseach, and yet nothing was done. So you can't say you were blindsided. So the question on behalf of motorists across the state is what is going to happen now? The priority has to be to support workers and businesses facing the worst cost of living crisis in a generation. So will you give a commitment on behalf of the government that the proposed hikes that are due to take place in the start of next year will not go ahead as planned?
Thanks, Deputy, and just want to acknowledge at the outset that Ireland is facing a cost of living crisis, as indeed is most of the world, and we're seeing inflation at levels that we haven't seen now for a generation, and that impacts different people in different ways, impacts different households in different ways, but certainly for people who drive, for people who commute, it's affecting them in a very serious way because the price of petrol and the price of diesel is so high at the moment, notwithstanding the reductions in excise duty. And for that reason, any increase in tolls is extremely unwelcome. And I represent a constituency in West Dublin, a commuter constituency. A huge number of people cross that toll bridge every day in both directions, and this will probably add something like €100 in a full year to their cost of living. And that's not a small amount of money at a time of a cost of living crisis. I have looked into this matter. The rules around tolls work differently depending on whether the asset, the road or the bridge is under the control of the government or not. So the M50 is different to Dublin Port, different again to the PPP roads. As things stand, the maximum toll is linked to inflation, is linked to CPI. There hasn't been an increase in tolls for 9 years because inflation was very low. But now that inflation is very high, that increase kicks in. and it's proposed to impose that increase on motorists from the 1st of January. But just because the maximum toll is set at a certain level doesn't mean it has to be applied. You can have a maximum price and not charge it. What we're trying to do over the course of the next few weeks is to see if we can find a way to mitigate the impact of that for motorists. There would be a cost involved. It's around 25 or 30 million euros, so not a small amount of money. But we are working with TII and working with the Department of Transport to see if we can do something to mitigate or defer that increase, which doesn't kick in until the 1st of January. I can't give you a solid cast-iron commitment here today because there are contracts involved. And the companies that you refer to will want their contracts to be honoured, and they will go to court if they're not, by the way, and probably succeed. And they'll also point out that the money is ring-fenced for roads. It doesn't go into the general exchequer. It's ring-fenced for roads, to maintain roads, improve them, and the cost of all that, as you know, has increased as well. The cost of labour, the cost of materials. So they'll make that point too. But I fully understand that this is a most unwelcome increase for motorists coming at the worst possible time. And we will work with the Department of Transport and TII to see if we can come up with solutions between now and the 1st of January.
Well, look, for motorists listening to the Taoiseach here, they'll find it incredible. The people who he says he represents in his constituency who are using tolls. TII put out a notification last year, Taoiseach, tolls increased this year already across 8 of the roads. That's already happened. This is the second increase now, which will take effect on the 1st of January next year. These tolls are increasing unless there's government inaction. You're suggesting 2 things. First of all, that they haven't increased last year. That's not true. They did increase this year. And the second thing is you're suggesting that they may not increase in January. They will increase unless there is government action. Now, we've had the Minister for Transport telling us that he's not minded to do anything in this here. We've had yourself say you were blindsiding it, despite your cabinet colleague, your party colleague, who sits at the cabinet table, Minister Hildegard Knockin, saying they were aware of this since early September. And it's only now because of the public outrage and the fact that we are so far and so deep into a cost of living crisis that the government is scrambling around like headless chickens, not knowing what to do. But people need to know, because there's only a number of weeks left in sitting here, what is actually going to happen between now and the end of the year? Is the government going to intervene? Can you give any assurances that these tolls will not go ahead?
Thanks, Deputy. The briefing I was given was that there hadn't been an increase in the maximum toll for 9 years. That may well be incorrect, and I'll get that double checked today. In terms of information, I wasn't informed, the Taoiseach wasn't informed, and the Cabinet wasn't informed. But I do accept the doctrine of collective responsibility, and if ministers were aware, well, then therefore the government was collectively aware. The question now is what we can do about it, and I'd like to be able to give you a cast-iron commitment here today, but it wouldn't be responsible for me to do so until we've explored the different options. And I think what Minister Ryan has said is that he wouldn't like to see the roads budget being reduced as a consequence, and he wouldn't like to see money taken out of public transport. And I understand where he's coming from in that regard. So we'll have to see if we can find another way to mitigate or defer these increases. They don't kick in until January. We have a bit of time, and we are working on it.